All right, welcome back to the boys chat. You got Tanner and Darren here with you today. We're gonna excuse the other guys; they got caught up and they're a little busy tonight or today or whatever. I don't know when y'all are listening to this, but when we're recording it, it is in the evening. I don't know why I'm telling you that, but it is what it is. Anyways, today's topic, it's pretty hot right now. It's a pretty hot topic. Um, if there are any ladies out there listening, um, I want you to pause real fast. Go ask your man if you have one. If you don't, call up a man
Brother.
that you know, a brother, father, cousin, what have you, roommate. If yeah, I'll do that. Anyways, go find a man and ask him this simple question. I'm sure you've seen it on TikTok, but it's how often do you think about the Roman Empire and
How
see
much
his
do you think?
reaction.
How much do you think your dad thinks about it?
Um, Not sure. I can't remember if we asked him or not,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't be surprised if it was more often than I would think. Although I'm pretty sure he probably thinks about ancient Egypt more because we've
Oh,
watched documentaries about ancient Egypt together.
okay.
So I'd say that. And I've seen TikToks where it's like it's not just the Roman Empire. That's a subset of the male species. But then you also got like pirates. You got like the Egyptian guys. You got like Greek guys. They went over a couple other ones. It's like that. There's your list. There's all the subset. You know,
Hmm.
species of the main species of the males.
Yeah.
So, but Roman seems to be a little bit bigger. Um, because if you think about it, the Roman Empire never disappeared. It just reformed into the Catholic Church. Roman Catholic, baby.
Oh, don't get me started.
Anyways, so today we're just going to kind of go over a brief outline, a summary of start to finish of the Roman Empire, maybe throw in some little facts you got, of engineering, architecture, some of their other achievements, and maybe some fun facts if we have time. And if this does well, if you guys like it, we will definitely do another episode and dive further into the Roman Empire because there's a lot here to uncover. Anyways, let's dive right into this. So, the start of the Roman Empire, from the research I did, there was kind of like a few different points in when the empire started. So, it was actually the traced back to the foundings of the Roman Republic, which was 509 BC. Right? So Rome started as a republic, not an empire.
Hmm.
Now in a republic is elected officials, democracy, what have you, right?
Essentially, starting with a Senate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it started with
Hmm.
like an elected like president, if you would. I'm not sure if they called it a president or whatnot, but anyways, and then the transition from republic to empire, they claim it started with Augustus Caesar, which was Julius Caesar's son, even though Julius Caesar in was it 44, 49 BC, he said, I'm the dictator. I'm the ruler of the Roman Republic. So technically it was kind of an empire, but they don't officially call it like the Roman Empire until his son or adopted son Augustus, um, otherwise known as originally known as Octavian, later known as Augustus, um, consolidated all the power and became the first emperor in 27 BC. Now, I'm not exactly sure how about that time. I looked at a couple websites and they were all kind of right around that time. There was some that were saying earlier, later, but about 27 BC was when it officially became an empire.
Hmm.
Um,
So, like plugging that into like because once you get into historical, like ancient times like that, the thing
mhm,
that makes it click best in my brain is just like the Bible. Gives it a little bit more of a timeline.
right.
So it's like Rome was just barely like I guess not becoming established, but becoming an empire right before like Jesus was born, which is kind of
30
nuts.
years, give or
Yeah.
take.
Uh huh.
So, um, oh man, I can't remember who was the empire during like Jesus's. mission, I guess. In the three
There was
years
like
that he was going around preaching.
King Harold, but
It
that
wasn't
was,
Rome, though. I don't
yeah,
think.
that wasn't Rome.
Mm,
I'm not really sure what that tie-in is.
He was king of something.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. But anyways, the empire lasted like 500 years or something like that. In the
Mhm.
height of the Roman Empire, um, it reached its greatest territorial extent under Emperor Trajan, Trajan. And I believe he ruled from 98 to 117 BC, or no, 80 CE. I don't know how. I'm going to say 80. I think CE is the scientific
Politically
term
correct.
for
Yeah.
common era. So I'm going to say 80. And in its height, it expanded three continents: Europe, Africa, and Asia. I believe it's, yeah, because Rome is in Italy. So it was
Uh-huh.
like almost all of Europe. You stretch down into Africa, and then you come over here to the Middle East and all of those people over there.
Hmm.
Jerusalem, which makes sense because that's over in the Middle East on the east part of the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
It also included provinces from modern day Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Mesopotamia. So, literally, like, there it is. One of the biggest to ever exist, although I think the Ottoman Empire was bigger. Um,
Yeah. I think that was just because lack of population. It was easier to control.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, there wasn't that many people during that time. I was watching a video and they were actually talking about how many people were around during like the time of Jesus, and it was only a few
Uh-huh.
100,000 people.
Okay.
Because we just barely, in the last few years, well, in the last 50 years, the population has doubled from 4 to 8 billion. We just hit the 8 billion persons mark. And if you take it the graph back, there was a few 100,000 people, maybe, I think is how many it
Okay.
was. I could be wrong, but that was known people, because you got
Mhm.
the people over here in the Americas, you got all through Asia, you got all through Africa. I mean, there's still tribes in Africa that we haven't even touched yet. So,
Yeah. And like South America, the Amazons and everything.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm sure there was, I mean, there's far more people on the earth than we think, but we just guess.
Hmm.
Um, so then the decline and the fall of the Roman Empire, the whole saying, oh, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it burned. Which is true. So there was no single cause for Rome to crumble and fall. It was a few different things that they claim it was: economic decline, military challenges, political instability, and then division. So, kind of like America right now. I'm not going to lie. Um, High taxation, inflation, and reliance on slave labor weakened the economy. Sounds like America minus the slave labor, you know.
It depends on what time in the timeline you're looking at.
It's true. It's
All
true. I'm talking about right now, man. I'm talking about right now.
right. All right.
Um, Military challenges were barbarian invasions and border conflicts strained at their resources. So people trying to get at Rome, they got to obviously send men and resources and stuff to defend that, weakened it. Political instability. So they had weak and ineffective emperors, which contributed to the instability, which, I mean, makes sense. If you don't have a strong leader, then you're going to fail. Again,
Uh-huh.
pretty,
Well, and
pretty
like
obvious in
for
today's
Rome,
day, but
like their whole mentality when it came to like outside threats was a strong offense is the best defense, you know?
mm, right,
So they're like going and just if they feel threatened by any outside source, they go and take the fight to them, conquer
right.
them, and Rome, you know? And
Hmm.
that's why the border gets so big that then it's super hard to control. Whereas if you look at like the Greeks, Athens in particular, it was like its own like government, I guess,
Right.
because the Greeks weren't super organized. Um, but in Athens, the first democracy, um, the city out there, it's got just like one massive like mountain type hill right in the middle of it,
Mount
and that's
Olympus.
where different one
Oh,
actually.
my bad.
Yeah, Mount Olympus is in. is in Greece, but in Athens, there's like the big one that's got the Parthenon, like the temple to the gods and
Oh, okay.
everything.
Right.
Um, and from there, they had a watchtower. Everything else all around that completely flat for like probably 100 miles.
Right.
You could see anything coming in, and if it's only one city, like you throw up walls, all your defenses are like pretty dense, you know.
Mhm.
Whereas Rome, the bigger they get, the more resources. Also, if they're relying on slave labor, like you said, then you have to have forces inside of Rome to help keep the slaves in line, as
Mhm.
well as people on the border to help keep the barbarians from coming in.
Right. Because I think Rome was more focused on expansion and conquering as much as they could. Where I feel like from everything I've known about like ancient Greece, it's they weren't necessarily trying to expand as much as they were just trying to like expand into other parts of Greece and take over like Athens versus Sparta, right?
Hmm.
Whereas they're both Greek, but they're divided amongst themselves. And there was a couple
Right.
other, places like that, but they were like the big ones, just
Uh-huh.
trying to gain control of each other, but not go out as much. Then they had the Persians come in and Battle of Thermopylae and, you know,
Hmm.
bye bye Sparta. So,
Yeah, it's like the Greeks just had like a lot smaller. We're a lot more smaller minded, or like
mhm,
smaller view of the world.
right.
And Rome like helped fill in a lot of the edges and like help
Mhm,
expand just our knowledge of
right.
the world.
Right. So, and then division in the empire, it split into the Western and the Eastern empires, and the Eastern one was the Byzantine. I know I'm saying that wrong. Empire in 20. It's not 20. Sorry, 285 AD. So, then some key events in the decline was the sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410, and then by the Vandals in 455. And then the deposition of the last Roman Empire emperor, Romulus Augustulus. I butchered that completely.
I think the first
Um,
one's Romulus.
There you go, Romulus Augustulus, maybe
Okay.
in 476 by the dramatic chieftain Odoacer, and that was traditionally considered the end of the Western Roman Empire. So just before 500 AD, it kind of went kaputski. So 400 or 500 years worth of ruling, which is a lot. I mean, the Egyptians ruled for longer in their empire, but still pretty big. Um, and then
I
the
mean,
legacy.
what are we at in America? 1776. We're at
Almost
250
100.
years.
Hmm? We're halfway.
Yeah, halfway to what Rome was, and to already see
Mhm.
like the freaking roller coaster that we've seen as a country.
Mhm.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I mean,
So
then you
then,
look at like Great Britain, because the British Empire was massive as well,
uh
and
huh,
that lasted. I mean, they're older than America,
yeah.
so
Well,
but not nearly
lasted,
as big.
lasted. They've been taking L's left and right,
That's true, man.
blowing the freaking up
1776,
here.
baby.
Whoosh.
1812, man. Eagle noises. So,
Now, but then to throw all of that even more into perspective, you think of like the Egyptians.
mhm,
That era was huge because
mhm.
like
That was
Cleopatra,
thousands of years.
yeah, Cleopatra was born closer to today's date than to like the
The start of
construction
the
of the
Egyptians.
pyramids.
Mhm,
Well, even just the pyramids, which means like
right.
Egypt was established. You know,
Mhm. Well, I
that's
mean,
crazy.
the dynastic Egyptians, so kind of the ones that we mainly focus on, so
Hmm.
like right around Cleopatra and that era, they
Yeah,
had their own archaeologists and historians digging up ancient Egypt and
yeah,
trying to figure out what that is. I mean, and the whole pyramids thing, that's a whole, oh, was it slaves? Was it aliens? What was it? What were they used for? Because they weren't initially used for, because it was
burial.
Khufu. Khufu was in the Great Pyramid. That's where he wanted to be buried. And his reign from when he became or pharaoh or whatever to when he died was, I think, 30 years. or close to that.
Okay.
Or maybe that's how old he was. I can't remember, but during his 30-year reign or something, the
Hmm.
amount of sandstone they had to cut and move in place to build the Great Pyramid was like thousands per second or something. They had to move so much nonstop for 30 years straight to build it
Uh-huh.
during his lifespan. So there's thoughts that they're way older than the dynastic Egyptians and that they were built by maybe a more ancient civilization. We don't have any record of them because
Mhm.
maybe they didn't use, once a civilization gets far enough, they start, instead of on tablets and stuff, they start using paper. And then once you
Uh-huh.
get even further, you start using, technology. And if, say, a giant flood comes or something goes crazy, EMP, the world resets, this stuff is junk and garbage and it gets thrown out the window. And then, like with paper, water comes in, that's gone. So
Uh-huh.
it's like we don't have any proof that they exist or something. Like there's a lot of speculation. So
Yeah.
it's they were converted from whatever they were before to then a burial thing for Khufu and other
Okay.
pharaohs. So
Probably a palace of some sort, like in
I
Mexico.
saw a battery. I've seen something that it was a battery or a power source or something. So
Hmm.
I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So 500 years for Rome, long time, but also
is
not
it that
a
long?
massively long time.
Mm. Compared to other things, of course.
Hmm. Compared to
Um,
America, long time.
yeah, yeah. Um, but now I think the reason why most men think about the Roman Empire, or most people think about it, is not like, oh yes, me and my platoon of soldiers, which wasn't called a platoon or whatever. Oh, we want to go do whatever, be Roman soldiers. I think it's more about what they left behind. So really, if you break it down, we probably think and use stuff left over from the Roman Empire in our daily lives more than we give credit for it.
Hmm.
Like there's roads in Italy that the Roman Empire built 2,000 years ago. So they
That's
obviously have.
cool.
Mhm. And then you got roads here, and it's after 3 days they're garbage.
For real.
Yep. Um.
Yeah. Those cobblestone streets and everything, like in
Mhm.
Mexico, ridiculously smooth. Obviously, there's like lots of cracks just at the junction of like all the cobblestones,
Mhm.
but or whatever it's called. They were like bricks, but not
Okay.
like square bricks. I don't know. They had like a weird shape to them, so they'd like fit together perfect like puzzle pieces.
Right.
But like as I was walking down those streets, I'd see people laying those by hand, and like
Right.
those suckers last.
Mhm.
It's crazy. But anyways,
Yeah. So some more of the legacy and impact on modern day that Rome had was one, the language. Latin, which was the language of the Romans, led to the foundation of a lot of languages like French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. So some pretty popular languages
and
in the
English.
world today. Yeah, I mean, English was kind of a subset of multiple different things, but
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
English as well. I think they consider English a subset of something else, but we have
Oh,
Latin roots and whatnot. So language very popular today. The legal system. So like the concept of innocent until proven guilty and the rule of law, those have their place in modern day legal systems, and those were popularized by the Romans. Um, Same with like the idea of representative government,
hmm.
whereas Greece and Athens had the first democracy. I think the idea of electing people and having representative and stuff like that was very popularized by the Romans. And since the Roman Empire was so much bigger than the Greek Empire, they kind of get credit for it. That, and I'm not
Hmm.
sure how old is the like Athens compared to Rome, because
Uh,
the Roman Republic started 400 BC. So really, the Roman Republic or Empire was like 800 or 900 years old,
hmm.
but the Empire part was half of that.
Yeah. So the Greeks were definitely around before Romans.
Hmm.
Like the original Romans came from the Greeks.
Right.
That's why like um, religion and everything, like their gods, are so similar.
Mm,
They just like
right.
adapted them, made them more warlike and more Roman, essentially. Um,
Fish out.
so yeah, I can't remember how Athens ended up like being beat or whatever, like crumbling. But Athens was definitely around before Roman time,
Hmm.
and then it might
Okay.
have even been the Romans that ended up going back and conquering Athens. I'm not sure.
Maybe it would make sense because I think they did at one point because the Roman Empire spanned the majority of like the Mediterranean. They
Uh huh.
got the north, east, and south part. So I would imagine that they probably at one point took over Greece.
Yeah, they definitely took over Greece. I'm just trying to remember if Athens had like fallen to the Persians or like someone else before Rome got there, or like who was in control when Rome took it over. But
Okay.
yeah, I know like a lot of the ancient stuff, like palaces the Greeks had made, the Romans
Mhm.
went and like just
Adopted.
wrecked them. Well, they
Mhm.
like destroyed them because they're like, no, these are our gods now.
Mhm.
Just trying to
Get
take
Zeus
over.
out of here.
For real, just trying to
bring
take
bring
over.
on Apollo. Yeah. So, and then another big one was architecture. Roman engineering and architecture, including the use of arches and aqueducts, are still visible in many modern buildings. And one big thing, and now the whole like arches and stuff and the big pillars were also kind of Greek, like with the Parthenon and their temples. So you
Hmm.
see it from both of those civilizations, and you see it a lot with like United States Capitol buildings. You got the massive giant pillars, and I'm not sure if those are more Greek or if they're more Roman, but either way, like that style came from this era. And
Hmm.
then, aqueducts are just, there's still aqueducts, I believe, in parts of Italy that are still used today that
That were
they
built.
built back then.
Yeah.
And those suckers are crazy. I watched a video about Roman aqueducts and how they work.
Uh-huh.
It was like they would, because the way an aqueduct works, right? It's pretty much just like a trench where the water comes in and they have to slope it the whole way. So they go try and find nice water up high and then it gets down its slide all the way down to wherever it needs to.
Hmm.
And so you couldn't always go up and over mountains and hills. So they'd go through them. And the way they'd go through them was they go to the top. And the math behind it was they would drill down so far and then start digging both ways. And then they would frame it up and stuff like that. Water would rush through. And then it was like it would go into like these big pits and somehow it would fill up and then go down to the next one and all this stuff so they could get around sometimes the height issue. It was
Okay.
just nuts.
Yo,
But
something crazy with aqueducts. When we were walking through Pompeii, it was like,
mhm,
honestly, from an archaeological point of view, Pompeii is nuts. Just like
mhm,
we were walking the same streets that like ancient Romans were. That was so cool.
right.
But it was like they had like sidewalks down the side, and then right down the middle of the street, they had like a couple big stepping stones to get from one sidewalk to the other. So it made it look like it was just made for water running down like all of the
Mhm,
major streets. And there'd be
mhm,
like random like fountain type things that would fill up and then spill over. So you could go to the fountain if you needed fresh water, but
mhm,
then I'm pretty sure like all the waste and everything would just be running down the street. So like
mhm.
more hygienic than if you were just pooping in a pit. But I
Right.
also don't imagine having the sewage running at surface level down Main Street smelled very good, even though it was healthier and more sanitary. Not ideal.
Right.
It was cool how they had the fresh water that would spill out into the contaminated water, so you could go and get the fresh stuff.
Right.
It was all part of the same water system.
Hmm. That's cool. All right. Let's hit a couple of these achievements that they have. So obviously their engineering and architecture, which we can dive crazy far into those. Those were some big achievements that they had that are still used today. A lot of their engineering. The idea of roads and infrastructure also was popularized by the Romans, and the extensive network of Roman roads, um, which facilitated trade, movement of armies, and what have you. That was a big thing that are still the idea I think is used today of having wide enough roads to where you can quickly get an army down is a big thing because that was their armies were pretty big. Their small ones, even their small ones were big.
Hmm.
The legal system, Roman law, representative doing stuff like that, and how the people, citizens have certain rights that are like you have rights as a citizen that you just like given, God given and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
The political concepts are still used, like having a senate.
Hmm.
Excuse me, was a big
Congress
Roman thing
for us,
during the
but like the same
Republic.
thing.
Huh?
It's like a Congress for us, but like same thing, just different word for it.
Yeah, I mean we have a senate and whatnot, but yeah, same idea where it's you elect people to go speak for your area, I
Yeah,
guess.
I
Because
was totally forgetting that we've got senators.
yeah, we've got senators,
Yeah.
dude. Because I mean, with how big that empire was, they couldn't like it makes sense because it's like the people that are in Rome are going to be different than the people in Egypt, that are going to be different than the people in Greece, and different than people
Mhm.
in the Holy Land and whatnot. So it makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, their
representation.
mhm. Their military tactics, the legionary system and siege warfare, religion, art and sculpture, public entertainment. So like gladiators and like having amphitheaters and plays were popularized by them, and like the whole gladiator idea where it's you go in, you butt heads, winner comes out on top,
Uh-huh.
kind of translates into certain sports, I guess, where it's like you're putting your bodies in. I think like rugby,
Hmm.
hockey, lacrosse, American football a little bit, where it's like you go into this giant arena, I guess, and fight
Yeah.
for legacy, I guess.
Hmm. Also,
Um,
as you're talking about that, I was thinking about um, the artwork. Like
mhm,
Greeks were the first ones that really started jumping into artwork and like sculpting and painting and stuff like that.
mhm,
But and we visited Rome and Greece like back to back within a week of each other. So
mhm.
it was just super cool to see the comparison. Everything Greek was like pretty crude. It was just like
Right.
it was good or like it was impressive that they were doing that back in the day. But like Roman stuff is nuts.
Mhm.
Like they had like tapestries, like quilts, the paintings, all the sculptures. Which also I
Right.
learned all the sculptures used to be painted and like the paint's faded.
Really?
But like yeah, imagine all that white like marble,
Marble?
but
Mhm.
like painted realistically. That'd be like that's kind of spooky. That's weird.
Yeah. Especially the green leaf down at the.
Uh huh.
Yep. And then just to wrap this up, Roman numerals are still a very common occurrence. For instance, the Super Bowl uses Roman numerals to decide, or not decide, to tell you what number it is. And it started with Super Bowl five. So instead of writing, a five or whatever, they used the Roman numeral, which was a V for five. And ever since then, it's been tradition to use Roman numerals. And those are, I mean, Star Wars did it. Star Wars does Roman numerals for their thing. So obviously it's pretty prominent. So yeah, people get
Yeah.
their, tattoos,
Yeah.
Roman numerals of their some important date. But yeah. So really, the Roman Empire has more of an impact on our daily lives than we give it credit for. So thank you for listening. I hope y'all learned something. Let us know your favorite fact about Rome or how often you think about Rome. And let us know if you want us to dive deeper into their architecture, their engineering, and maybe their military. I think their military is pretty impressive and their ideas. So, yeah, just let us know what you like, what you didn't like. Subscribe, click the bell, let us know, and we will catch you next week. Bye.
See ya.